This is Maureen Kafkas, the Brain BS coach, here to tell you about the episode today. In this episode, I speak with parenting and teen coach Ben Pugh. We talk about all the brain BS around the parent-teen relationship, how the parent often thinks the kid is the problem, and in reality, it is the parent not understanding what's going on and understanding how their own mind's working. Ben has devoted his life to helping these people because he has his own story that led him there, and he's going to share that story with you in the podcast. So sit back, settle in. Episode number 164 of the Brain BS podcast, the Brain BS around the parent-teen relationship with Ben Pugh. Do you want more out of your life but not exactly sure what that might be? Are you longing for something but can't quite put your finger on what it is? That is the universe speaking to you, and it is time to listen up. I'm your host, Maureen Kafkas, the Brain BS coach. I created the Brain BS podcast to help people define what success means to them and show them how to get it. I help you to let go of fear and doubt and prepare your nervous system for success. I show you how to understand your own energy and to trust yourself to make all the decisions. If you are ready to go inward and stop looking outside yourself for all the answers, this is the podcast for you. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Brain BS podcast. So I have a guest here today, Ben Pugh. He is a coach. He coaches teens and parents of teens. But before I let him introduce himself, I want to tell you why I invited him onto the podcast. Because I decided that this was going to be a relationship series that I was doing this month. And I wanted to talk about all kinds of different relationships. And then I saw a post that he made and I was like, oh my God, I definitely want him to come on the podcast. And it was related to, he'll be able to tell you better exactly what it was, but it was related to how often parents think that their teenager is the problem and how it's not. All right, that's all I'm going to say for right now. That parents, you can get triggered, and there's a lot of mirroring and projecting going on with you and your kids. And Ben's going to introduce himself and talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Okay. So, like you said, I'm a coach for teens and parents of teens. And I kind of got into coaching. It's kind of a long story. Like mine starts earlier than most coaches, but when I was 13 years old, I accidentally lit my school bus on fire with rubber cement. And to like fast forward to the end, I'll give you some details. Like, if I can be a successful human being, like that's part of my mission to show parents, like, hey, your teen can make mistakes. They'll be fine. Don't catastrophize. Don't act like your teen ruined their life. Just hang on for the ride and be like, ooh, wow, what can we make out of this? So to like just quickly give you some of the details, like one of my friends actually stole some rubber cement at school back in the 90s. I don't know why we always had rubber cement at school, and that was kind of a thing. But I knew he had stolen it, and he asked me to hold it, and I felt guilty all day long because I had that thing in my backpack.
Wait. I'm just going to stop you because I don't even know what rubber cement is. So why
What?
would you feel? I don't know what it is.
So in the 90s, like we would always like paste stuff together, and some kids would sniff it because it like smelled strong. And one of the things that we would do is we'd like paint our hands with this rubber cement, and then we'd roll it all
Oh, so
together,
it's like
and it would
glue.
make, yeah,
It's
well,
like
it's
Elmer's
glue.
glue. Okay.
Elmer's glue, but like in a bottle with like a brush that you can like paint it on things.
Okay. All right. I know what you're talking about now. Okay.
So when I go speak in schools, it's funny. I like ask the kids, like, how many of you guys have ever used rubber cement? And it's like crickets. And I'm like, okay, let's ask your teachers. How many of you guys remember using rubber cement in school? And all the teachers are like, yeah, that was like a thing back in the day. I'm probably the one that ruined it. I apologize, guys, because when my friend stole it, like later that day when we're on the school bus, he's like, dude, do you have my rubber cement? And as I was fishing it out of my backpack, one of my other friends was like, hey, I've got a lighter. Let's see what happens. And this is why I say I accidentally lit my school bus on fire, because I was not the mastermind of this thing. Like I had no intention of doing this. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I grew up milking cows, so I had a really good grip. And like, I'm the one that had to open that can. And while I was holding it, my friend lit it on fire. And that bottle of rubber cement just boom, just went up in flames so fast. And I tried to throw it out of a bus window and I missed and I hit one of the small bars in between windows and sent flaming rubber cement all over the back of the school bus. Now, unfortunately, it was towards the end of the bus ride home, so the bus was nearly empty, and all the good kids were in the front, and us few knuckleheads were in the back, and no one got hurt. But I remember my parents, my mom in particular, like I remember she told me, Ben, the only people that I've ever known who have gotten suspended from school are either in jail or they are dead now. Like she thought I had ruined my life. I remember church leaders saying, Ben, you've ruined your life. Like I wanted to go on a mission for my church. And they're like, we don't send arsonists out to represent the church. I didn't even know what an arsonist was. And
Oh my God.
I remember going to one of my friends' houses. Like we had played together for years. One of my best friends, and his mom met me at the door and she's like, you can't play here. We don't want you to burn our house down. And I'm like, my whole life felt like it had gone up in flames with the rubber cement.
Wait, wait, wait.
And
Okay, I want to stop here for a second because that is something that people do, and I've been guilty of doing that in the past myself. And Oprah actually had some kind of episode on some kind of show about a guy that came on who worked with people that were in prison and talking about you were so much more than the worst thing that you've
yeah,
ever done. And to think that that was happening to you as a teenager, that
yeah.
people were doing that to you is pretty scary.
Well, and that kind of like that was the first time I got suspended. And I had always struggled in school, but before then it was academically. Like I was dyslexic. I had ADHD, like just a bunch of things that made school harder. Well, after being labeled as kind of a bad kid, now I struggled in school for behavior reasons. And I it sounds weird, but like I remember my mom like crying, like, what is wrong? Like, why can't you be better at school? I didn't know. Like I had no idea why I couldn't be better. I tried, but I just always seemed to be in the wrong place, make the wrong decisions. And looking back, I feel like a lot of it was a lack of a sense of belonging. And with teenagers, if they don't feel like they belong, they shift their focus from belonging to being accepted. And I think that was one of the things that I struggled with. I didn't feel like I belonged. And so now I'm trying to be accepted. I'm trying to fit in with the cool kids, and that gets me doing dumb stuff. But the reason this all has to do with me being a life coach, it took me years to recover from that incident because I believed that I had ruined my life. And through a chain of weird, unusual circumstances and events, I became a high school principal. Now, I have my bachelor's degree in education, but I don't have a master's in education. And I wasn't technically qualified to be a high school principal. But due to circumstances, I was able to be a high school principal and a really successful, good one for 5 years. And where my story kind of comes full circle, one day I had to suspend a young man for smoking weed in the bathroom. And when I would suspend kids, like I always made it a point to talk to their parents because I wanted to make sure that their parents understood like this isn't the end of the world. Like I'm not the type of principal that like sends a kid home and then never has any communication with the parents.
Mhm.
So I had this dad in my office with his son, and he is just getting livid. And I'm a big dude. I'm 6 foot, 240 pounds. And like this guy's bigger than me. And I'm like, I'm going to get beat up protecting his own son. Like, timeout. And I remember saying, timeout. Let me tell you about the first time that I was suspended. And I shared the whole bus fire story. And this dad went from being livid and just angry to all of a sudden chuckling. And I remember him elbowing his son. He's like, hey, maybe you'll turn out to be a principal someday. And that's when I kind of saw the power. Like, if I can help parents put this in a different context, if I can help them have a different perspective, we can go from having a parent who's going to be upset and knowing like the community and the background, like the kid was probably going to get a beating at home. Like, if I can share, like, hey, here's a different perspective. Here's a different outlook. And have the dad all of a sudden be like chuckling, like, hey, maybe you'll turn out to be a principal. And like they go out of my office actually happy and hopeful. It's like, oh my goodness, this is what I want to do.
Wait, I have
And
to stop you. I have to stop you because I got total goosebumps when you told that story. And I can never control when I get goosebumps. I just
yeah,
do.
yeah,
And just the power of, because you didn't just like, it's not like you let the kid off the hook and that the kid didn't have to deal with the consequences and be accountable for his behavior for smoking the weed. But
yeah,
you eliminated all the brain BS around it and all the fears and all the things that were coming up in that dad's head about what this meant for his kid in the future. And I think this is a really big issue with parents. They make like mountains out of molehills over a
yeah.
lot of things because they're being triggered about things in themselves.
Yes, yes. I love how you put that. Like you're getting into some deeper stuff here, which is really good. Parenting your teens, like it's going to trigger you, but it has less to do with your teen and more to do with you. Like your triggers, you own those. Those are yours. And you're responsible for like, how am I going to work through this? How am I going to grow? How am I going to move beyond this? And when parents understand, like, oh, your teen misbehaving, it's not an opportunity for you to change or fix or control your teen. It's an opportunity for you to change, to grow, to control yourself. And I like to talk about perspective. I have this example that I like to share. If you ever look at the moon, when it's straight up above you, as high as it can be in the sky, it looks tiny. The moon just looks small. But if you're looking at it on the horizon as it's on its way up or on its way down, it looks massive. Like the other night, we were driving home from a football game and it was a full moon. I live in Utah, so there's beautiful mountains here. And in between two mountains, so there's like this valley, and here comes the moon. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's massive. Like it's almost big enough to fill the space between the two mountains. Well, the truth is, the moon is always the same exact size. And if you're on Earth looking at the moon, it's going to look the exact same size, but depending on your frame of reference, it might appear bigger or smaller. So when it's up at the very top of the sky, like it looks tiny because you're comparing it to the vast amount of space that's around it. When it's on the horizon, it looks massive because like that the other night, like, man, it's as big as these mountains here. It changes the perspective. And when you talk about like brain BS, you and I might disagree here. So this might be a really fun conversation here, but there are the facts. That's like the moon. It's the moon, it's there, it's what size it is. And then there's the brain BS or our filters, our interpretations. And when the moon's at the top of the sky, like it's a certain filter, it's a certain way of interpreting it. But when it's on the horizon, it's another way. And for me, when it comes to brain BS, it's like I can choose to believe the brain BS, or I can come up with my own BS that works better for me, and I can choose to believe that. And so with this teenager, like his dad was like, I can't believe my kid did this. He's ruined his life, blah, blah, like all that BS. Or I can plant the story of, hey, your teen will be okay. Like maybe he'll be a principal. Like this is a good process for him to go through. It'll teach valuable lessons. We just get to choose which story are we going to let be the filter through which we see reality.
Okay, so all right, so in terms of brain BS, for me, and it's not like it's a real term, I made it up and trademarked it. So
Which is awesome.
it's
Yeah.
like, yeah. So it's just your subconscious and unconscious programming. So
Yeah.
sometimes you don't know it's there. So you don't
Yeah.
know you're overreacting. Sometimes you don't even, most people don't even know they're triggered if they've never learned what
Yeah.
triggered means. They think that the other person is the problem and it's not them.
Yep.
So when we choose a thought on purpose, it's still not true. It's a thought, but it's not brain BS because it's conscious.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right. So, but you always say, well, we have the option of making a conscious choice when we know that it's available to us and it's possible. But the
Yeah.
majority of people who have never learned about this concept don't even realize how many options they have to look at things, or that they are being guided by something they're not even aware of that's inside
Yes.
from their upbringing and all the things that happened to them. Like, and what about like the moms, okay, with the teen girls and the mean girl thing,
Yeah.
and the boys with the bully thing and stuff. Like a lot of times that's bringing up stuff because there's no person that ever went through high school or grade school or all that that hasn't experienced some level of trauma
Yeah.
from being in a group setting, because that's what happens when you're around other people. You start comparing yourself and despairing, and then you go down all these rabbit holes and you make up all this stuff. So can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I want to ask you some questions first because this
Okay.
is really good. So your definition for brain BS, like these are things, it's the programming happening below the surface, the subconscious programming that's going on.
Subconscious and unconscious, where
Okay,
it's so deep that you have no, like, there's no, you can't even
awareness.
cultivate awareness around it. You're just like, no, that's not me. Even if somebody says something,
Yeah.
it's, you don't even know it's there.
Have you read the book Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker?
No.
So that book predates Brooke and the Life Coach School. And he has a model where he outlines TFAR, thoughts, feelings, actions, results. But instead of circumstances, he puts a P for the first letter, and that's programming. And then he's like, based on our programming, that then determines how we think, then how we feel. So, like, uses the model, but he addresses programming. And that would kind of be like these unconscious things that we don't even know are going on. And then I believe what makes our job awesome as coaches is oftentimes we can identify the subconscious programming, we can help bring it to the person's awareness. And this is the cool thing about the human mind. 95% of what we do is driven by our subconscious. Like we don't realize this, but most of what we do from day to day, our subconscious is secretly driving the ship, guys, and we don't even know this. But as coaches, when we can help bring that to the conscious mind, we can now update that programming. We can reprogram our mind to function more the way that we want it to. And then here's the part that I think is the most magical: we can let that slide right back into our subconscious, let it operate behind the scenes the way it's supposed to. But rather than being programming that we picked up from our parents or our teachers or our middle school bully, it's our programming that we took the time to up level and then put it back down there to guide us. Is that like,
Yes.
does that
Yeah,
awesome?
that's how I look at reprogramming your brain. BS. First, you have to become aware of it.
Yeah.
You have to understand the problems that it's causing, what it's creating for you in your life. Then you have to consciously decide what programming that you received from anyone and everywhere in your life, what do you want to keep? What can be useful and helpful to you? And what
Yeah.
should you just disregard because it is not working for you and it's not helping? And then that's just the beginning, right? That's just the beginning. You figure out why you have the results that you have. Then you go deeper and you start building a trust in yourself to make all the decisions about how you want to run your life, how you want to parent, how you want to do everything. And then you are in a position where you get to do it your way and authentically. Like you
Yeah.
don't have to do it like anybody else when you start really understanding. And people don't, like, just all the milestones in school, the confirmations, the graduations,
Yeah.
like all of it. And when any kid veers from any of that, like it's some catastrophe. And it's just
Yes.
so crazy that it's kind of antiquated, really, that society, the school, the college education, how much money it costs is insane. And now it's kind of going away from that because it's cyclical. And people
And
are starting to try to figure out, how can I be successful without going to college?
yeah,
What can I do? So it's like, yeah, it's like becoming your authentic self and not
yeah,
on purpose. And you could keep stuff that your parents told you if you like it and you want it.
yeah. Oh my goodness. There aren't very many people teaching this. And I love that I have found someone else because I feel like I'm alone sometimes and I get these new ideas and I like try and bounce them off like other my friends and stuff. And they're like, dude, you're weird. Who even thinks like that? But now I know I can come talk to you about this.
You can always talk to me about this stuff. Like, that's what the Brain BS podcast is all about. It's creating a nervous system to support success. And the only way you can do that and be successful, and you get to define however that is by understanding how you're programmed and learn how to respond to things instead of react and do it
Yeah.
consciously.
Here's the crazy thing. Sometimes people are so reluctant to question their programming. Like, I'm not even talking like update it or change it. I'm talking like, let's just question. Let's just put it under the microscope for a minute. But if we look at like the real life, like you guys listening to this, like I just held up my iPhone and you guys can't even see, but I held up my iPhone. Like, how often does this thing have to update its programming? And we don't think anything about it. We're like, oh yeah, like update it. I want to be better protected from like bugs and viruses and like whatever. Like we get it. But when it comes to our own life, like we don't get it. Like, guys, question your programming, put it under a microscope. Like, if you're struggling with your teenager, like, this is the perfect example. Most people, and this is where most parenting experts, like, I'm just going to call it how I see it. Most parenting experts are getting it wrong because they're more focused on the teen. Like, hey, parent this way so that your teen will stop. Well, it sounds like it's focused on the parent, but it's really focused on your teen. And when you can realize, no, it's not my teen here. My teen's not the problem. It's me. How can I create the change that I'm looking for? And that is empowering because if you wait for your teenager to change, depending on how old they are, if they're 14, you're going to be waiting 10 to 15 years before they actually change. Like, that's how long it's going to take their brain to develop. If
Or
you
longer, because it doesn't, because in age, I mean, look at all the people that you were just saying are the same at the
yeah,
age of 20 as they are at 80. Like, they
yeah,
literally haven't updated their programming at all. So they're not any different. They spend their
yeah,
whole lives unaware and not questioning anything.
yeah, that is a good point, which just highlights what I'm saying. If you're waiting for your teen to change, you are positioning yourself as the victim. You are at the mercy of your teen. But if you own, no, this is me, like I'm responsible for my portion of this. What can I change? That's the most empowering thing ever because that is where you have power when you explore what's within my control and just let go of everything else. And really, like, if you look at the world, we are focused on so many things outside of our control. And that's just so much energy that we just throw out that has no return. But if we can bring that back and harness it and be like, oh, I can't control my team, but I can control my programming when it comes to me being a parent. I'm going to re harness this energy and I'm going to apply it to that. That is when you're going to experience a transformation in your parenting.
Yeah. I mean, you could apply the same principles to any relationship,
Yeah.
right? Not just a parent and a teen. Whenever you're waiting for somebody else to change in order to feel better, you're screwed.
Yes.
And it's not going to happen. And you know why? I mean, I'm going to bring universal law into this too. It's not going to happen because you desperately want it to happen. So you're full of angst and fear.
Yes.
And that is not going to attract abundance and good things to you. It's just going to attract more of the same.
Yeah. This came to me just today. So it's interesting that we're talking about this, but like when you talked about like your relationship with anything, a lot of people like are focused on their relationship with like things that aren't even like people, like your relationship with health, with money, with abundance, like that type of stuff. When most people think about like the law of attraction, they think about like this smiley face and like all these arrows pointing into the smiley face, like, oh my goodness, I'm a magnet, I'm attracting everything. that's the wrong image. Here's, in my opinion, a more accurate image of the law of attraction. Picture that smiley face in the middle. And yes, maybe there's an arrow coming into the smiley face, but there's also an arrow leading out. And there's another arrow leading out and another one coming in. And rather than the law of attraction, like attracting things to you, the law of attraction is actually attracting things through you. And if you want to get something different, you got to start putting something different out. And what people don't realize, they focus on creating the change that they want, like attracting more money, having a better relationship with their team, but they're not willing to put something different out into the universe. And I heard this from one of my coaches. I think it was Jim Fortin who talks about this. He's like, it's like coming into this like cabin or this room that's freezing cold, sitting down by the fireplace and saying, warm me up, and then I'll put a log on and I'll start like it doesn't work that way. Like you got to come in and you got to put a log on the fire and then it can warm you up. And I like to call this like parenting with an outward focus. And we have no power. But when you start parenting from the inside out and you're managing your own brain BS and you're managing your own thoughts and your feelings and your behaviors, that's like putting that log on the fire so that now it can give you warmth. When you create change on the inside, things on the outside will start to change to mirror your inside.
Yes, exactly. And I also just want to point out with law of attraction, you're not going to get what you want just because of law of attraction. It's a law
Yeah.
of cause and effect that gets
Yeah.
you what you want. So you have to take action in order to get something. So when I think of law of attraction, I think of a frequency of how I want to
Yeah.
live my life. And I also do not assume that the abundance that's coming to me is financial, because
Yeah.
there's all kinds of different ways to measure success in life. And if the universe doesn't think that money is the way it should come to me, I fully trust that it's going to come in some other sort of way.
Yeah. I love that. And like when you talked about frequency and like the law of attraction and like this cause and effect, the law of cause and effect, what people don't realize, like the relationship, the money, the wealth, the health, those are the effect. And the problem is too many people are focused on the effect rather than being focused on the cause. And if you're just focusing on the symptoms or the effect, like you're disempowered. Like, yeah, we can treat the symptoms here and there, but you're not going to get to the root of it, the cause, until you shift your focus from the effect over to the cause. So,
To
and that's
yourself,
where,
right?
yes, and that's where parenting comes in. Like, your
Yes.
teen is the effect. Stop
Yes.
focusing on the effect and shift your attention to the cause, which is you.
Yes, exactly. Well said. And there will be people listening to this are totally annoyed by us right now with the way we're talking about this, but I don't care because we both know it's true.
Yeah,
It
like,
is the truth. It's like you every time you get triggered by another human, it is an invitation to go inward, hands
yes,
down. Doesn't mean that other person didn't do something wrong or didn't do something bad or doesn't need to own their own behavior. It just means that if your solution is to control the other person, you're in trouble, because it is never going to happen. You're never going to be able to make other people do anything. The only thing you have control over is yourself.
yeah. One of my most controversial podcasts, I can't even remember what it's called. I called it like trigger warning or something. And in the podcast, I talk about how you're responsible for your triggers. And I know when I have a good podcast, if I get people reaching out to me saying, like, how could you say that? Like, how could you, like, that's so mean. And I have a powerful example. So, my daughter, when she was like 3 or 4, she nearly got attacked by a dog. And man, that traumatized her. Like, she was deathly afraid of dogs for a long time. It would be easy to blame the dog, to blame the dog owner, to blame me. Like, I was there and I couldn't get to her fast enough. Like, it still breaks my heart when I remember her just like pleading with a dog, like, don't hurt me, please. And it just melts my heart. But there's a point where like she wouldn't go to her cousin's house. She wouldn't go to Halloween parties and Christmas parties because they had dogs and she was so afraid. And there was a part where I had a conversation with her. I'm like, do you like this reality that you're creating? Do you like missing out? And she's like, no, I wish I could go hang out with my cousins. I wish I weren't afraid of dogs. So we're like, okay, well, what can we do? Like, we thought about doing therapy and doing other things. And this is where, like, you don't have to force the change to happen. You can identify and set your intention, and then the universe is going to take care of things. But like, my daughter decided, like, I want a dog. And we're like, what? Like, you're afraid of dogs? She's like, no, I want a cute little dog. I think that would help me. And she happened to be the one who identified the dog. And the cool thing is that dog's siblings all sold for like $4,000 and $5,000, and no one wanted this dog. Which I saw the siblings, like, our dog was the cutest. He was under $1,000. Guess what? We can afford that. Like, it works out. She loves dogs. She can go to her cousin's house with no problem. And the reason why is because she took ownership for her triggers, her trauma. And when you own it, you then have the power. You can choose, do I want to address it or do I not want to? And neither one is right or wrong. Like, you pick what works for you. Her effect was, I can't spend time with my cousins. I can't go to their parties. Like, anytime the dog barks, like, I'm out. I don't like it. I don't like that. What's the cause? Oh, it's me. How do I address that? I want a puppy. We addressed it. She has a completely different reality, a completely different cause now, or effect. I mean, the thing is, if you take ownership over your triggers, over your trauma, over whatever's going on with your team, that is the most empowering thing ever. If you want to create a different result or a different outcome, you be the cause and focus on you.
Yes. And I just want to offer that the reason why she was able to do that is because the impact of you doing the work you're doing, it had a ripple effect on her.
Yeah.
And that's how energy works. And it's energy is way louder than any words you can say. So
Yeah.
as a parent, if you're looking at your kid and thinking negative things about them beneath the surface, but pretending with them like you're not, well, the energy that's coming
This
through
can be out of
is not
alignment.
that yeah, and it's like that with anything that you're saying to another human being. So if you think that being a people pleaser or being polite on the outside, but you're not really on the inside, and that you're having this phony relationship with your kid because you're trying to keep peace and you're trying to, not cause any waves and you just want everybody to be comfortable, that's going to create more problems. And I know because I did it. Like
Yeah.
I did it as a stepmom. It was just trying to keep, and then you just get full of resentment when you're not actually being honest and authentic. So there's so many levels to parenting and things that come up for you when you're dealing with another human. And I just want to offer too that age has nothing to do with it. There are kids that are way wiser than their parents
Yeah.
when it comes to spiritual development and growth. So this idea, Eckhart Tolle talks about it, that the kid's yours and you're responsible for them until they become 18. And then you could still love them and had a life with them, but they're an individual then. They're not here to satisfy anything about the parent. They're here to live their own lives and go on their own journey. And I think that parents get that a little mixed up too with expectations they have of their kids throughout their entire lives.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that and echo that. And when you realize your kid is on their own journey, and so are you, and the best way to help guide your child on their journey is to purposefully be on your own journey. Like, I feel like, I don't know, it's probably a worldwide thing, but like, as adults, we kind of think, oh, I'm an adult now. I've arrived. I know everything. I'm done. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Like, you're an adult. You're not. like your parents aren't responsible for you anymore. Like you go do your growth, be on your journey. Don't just try and experience life and growth through your child and their growth. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a really
I
good
love that.
point. A lot of people are like living vicariously through their kids and getting them to do things that they couldn't do or weren't able to do, and then getting pissed at them when they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
When, it's like, all right, well, so what's it look like to work with you? How do you work with people?
Yeah. So I do one on one coaching and I also do a membership for parents of teens. And my one on one, I don't know, the best place would probably be my membership because my one on one stays pretty full. If you're a parent of a teenager, go take my parent trap quiz. That's going to help you identify and understand, where am I getting stuck? Am I in the controlling parent trap, the doormat parent trap, or the lost and confused parent trap? The quiz is completely free and it will give you your results, and that will help inform you, like, how do I get out of this trap? And so if you go to Ben Pugh Coaching / Parent Trap Quiz, that'll get you the quiz. And then from there, like, you'll be on my email list and you can learn about my membership for parents of teens. If you're on my email list, like, just hit reply if you feel like, no, I need one on one coaching, and I'll talk to you about that and what it looks like. And the membership is awesome. Inside the membership, you get access to my Impact Parent course for free. And the cool thing, what I think is really unique about how I coach, and I think you probably do this too in talking to you, it's not just coaching tools. Like, it's a lot of the spiritual work that it takes to reprogram your identity and to really live in alignment with who you want to be. And so if you're struggling to connect with your teen, or your teen's struggling and you don't know how to help them, come to me because I can really help you start being the parent of your dreams, which will help you have that impact on your teen.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And then we'll put the link for the Parent Trap quiz, because then that'll be the link to your website in the
Yeah.
show notes.
Yeah. You could also go to benpughcoaching.com if you just want to go to my website. You can see my podcast from there, like all of that. And if you go there for the first time, like, there'll be a pop up that says, hey, take the Parent Trap quiz. So
Okay.
either one of those, benpughcoaching.com, that's the link to my website, benpughcoaching.com / Parent Trap quiz. They'll take you straight to the quiz. And I've had a lot of parents tell me that quiz helped me understand what I needed to do to really grow. And there's a lot of people that the quiz alone was able to help them really improve their relationship with their teen.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you work with boys and girls,
Yep, boys and girl, doesn't matter.
non-binary, all of them, like whatever gender you work with,
Yeah,
all of them.
like, I I shared with you my story about, like, lighting the school bus on fire. Judgment does not really help foster a sense of belonging. It doesn't help grow relationships. I feel like, because of my experience, like, I am really good at being able to coach anybody. Like, it doesn't really matter, boys, girls, non-binary. I do always do a free consult first. Like, I'm not the type of coach who's trying to sell as many coaching packages as I can. I really want to know, are you and I going to be a good fit? And are we going to enjoy working with each other? And then from there, we decide if we want to do one on one coaching. And the membership is a good place to start. I'll have a lot of parents who start there who are like, oh, I love your stuff. My teen's interested in help. How do we work with you? And that way, when parents start the journey, your teen's going to get a lot more mileage on their own journey because they see what you're doing. So,
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to tell everyone about it. Is there anything that you didn't have an opportunity to say that you would like to say before we wind up the podcast?
I don't know. I do want to say this. This has been one of the most fun conversations that I've had in a very long time. So I need to have you on my podcast, and we need to just do this again. And I love what you're teaching. And I told you before you hit record, like, I see you. I see what you're doing. You are an inspiration to me. I'm just flattered that you would even consider having me on your podcast. So thank you.
Oh, you're so kind. And I appreciate that. We're definitely going to work together. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
definitely a good energetic match and stuff. So it'll
Yep.
be fun to come up with ideas and stuff of what we can do. But so thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you.
And audience, I know you learned something valuable here today. I'll see you next episode. Thanks for taking the time to learn how to master your brain BS. I hope you enjoyed listening to the episode as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. If you're inspired, I would really appreciate it if you could take the time to do a 5-star review and tell everyone about the podcast. And if you want to learn more about how you can be a part of something amazing and a community that's trying to give back and change the world in a positive way, you can go to www.thebrainbs.com to find out how.